Imagine the Kremlin's echoes turning to whispers of dread, as Vladimir Putin's costly gamble in Ukraine reaches its grim fourth year. What unforeseen nightmare could shatter his iron grip now? A chilling new threat looms, one that humiliates him before the world stage. Sweden's bold entry into long-range warfare forces Putin to confront a reality he never envisioned. Ukraine's advanced drones and missiles striking Moscow? That's already a slap in the face. But now, the equation shifts. Russia isn't the only bully on the block. Sweden's announcement sends shivers down Putin's spine, exposing his vulnerabilities and twisting the narrative into a tale of inevitable comeuppance. Building on Putin's mounting anxieties from Ukraine's drone strikes deep into Russian soil, the pressure mounts without mercy. Reuters reveals on November 25 that Sweden's armed forces demand government action to acquire extended-range cruise missiles. These precision tools could hammer targets far inside enemy lands, acting as a shield against territorial invasions. Swedish Chief of Defense Staff Carl-Johan Edström emphasizes their role as a preventive force. Envision the cold Baltic air humming with anticipation as these missiles, designed to cover up to 2,000 kilometers, that's about 1,240 miles, target vital infrastructure and military hubs, their guidance systems whispering doom across vast distances. This isn't random, the range screams a clear message, aimed squarely at one aggressor, Russia. Can you feel the tension, the metallic chill of launch pads ready for action? Caught off guard, Putin's bravado crumbles. His isolation stark in the face of European unity. Recalling how Ukraine's long-range capabilities pinned Russia back, humiliating its defenses and forcing costly retreats, Edström's report explodes a bombshell. The Swedish outlet SVT exposes the truth: Russia is the prime target, its escalating military threats growing fiercer by the year. Edström warns of Russia's potential to rebuild on a massive scale within 2 to 5 years, despite depleting its stocks in Ukraine's blood-soaked fields. Picture the acrid smoke of battlefield lessons rising, where every explosion etched lessons in hubris. This isn't mere speculation, the report aligns with NATO's goals, fortifying Europe's front against Russian advances. Defense Minister Paul Johnson echoes the urgency, recalling the Ukraine conflict's harsh evidence of Russia's missile prowess. We must counter this with unbreakable resolve, he states. So, will Putin's underestimations now bite him, exposing a farce in his global pretensions? An unexpected twist unfolds as Sweden eyes a range double the Stockholm to Moscow gap, poised for retaliation that leaves dictators trembling. What if this deterrent shatters the illusion of Russian invincibility? As the smoke from Ukraine's strike still lingers in Moscow's air, a legal shield emerges to frame Sweden's strategy, clever and calculated, invoking NATO's Article 5. This treaty declares an attack on one ally an assault on all, demanding collective aid. Assistance could range from diplomatic fury to armed reprisal, giving each member leeway in their fierce response. Can you hear the heartbeat of deterrence? The rustle of treaties tightening like a noose around aggressors? Sweden ties its missiles exclusively to this clause, painting their acquisition as pure defense, not aggression. Yet, it humbles Putin further, for as a NATO newcomer, Sweden can summon allies if hit, turning a Russian offense into a chorus of condemnations and strikes. Dreams of asymmetry vanish, Russia's actions invoke a symphony of opposition. Feel the weight of that caveat, a tactile reminder that isolation spells doom. But beneath this legal layer lurks an emotional undercurrent. Putin's famed brinkmanship now invites backlash beyond his control. Swirling through these defensive depths, the question arises, what missiles will arm this Swedish sentinel? Edström calls for systems piercing 2,000 kilometers, deterring Russian reach. Rumors swirl around Germany's Taurus, slated for Sweden's Grip fighter jets. This air-launched marvel, produced by Saab, boasts precision that smells of impending precision strikes. Taurus homes in on targets with unerring accuracy, its tandem Mephisto warhead designed for deep penetration. Can you imagine the low-altitude hum, skimming at just 50 meters overhead, evading radars in a game of cat and mouse? Though its 500-kilometer range falls short of full deterrence against Moscow, it excels in destroying fortified sites, bridges crumbling under its programmed detonations, buildings gutted floor by floor in calculated carnage. But Putin's wrath builds. He knows Taurus could devastate his strategic assets, merging speed, stealth, and explosive force. As Sweden integrates this weapon, Training whispers of rapid mastery in 12 weeks, a twist humiliates the autocrat, his empire's strengths pale against such adaptable foes. From the edifice of defensive vows, an ironic twist crashes in Taurus's limitations breed fresh humiliation for Putin. A 500-kilometer reach means it couldn't reliably pierce Moscow from Sweden without perilous risky gambles inside Russian skies. Yet, deployed over the Baltic, it becomes a dagger under Allah's nose, threatening key targets and eroding Putin's boasts. Feel the damp chill of sea launches, the vibration of jets screaming toward horizons untamed. This isn't defeatism, it's strategic evolution, where Sweden's choices expose Russia's vulnerabilities, turning the tide in Europe's favor. Defense evolutions like this warp power dynamics, leaving aggressors like Putin to grapple with mirrors of their own tyranny. But what if these advancements signal the end of an era, forcing Putin into unprecedented retreats? The air thickens with unresolved fury, as surprises yet await in this relentless chess game. Imagine this, Vladimir Putin's grip on power slips further as Ukraine's relentless drones and missiles pound Moscow itself. But now, a shocking twist, Sweden enters the fray with missiles that could humiliate Russia, striking fear deeper than any NATO threat ever could. Can Sweden's bold new arsenal shatter Putin's empire, or will it ignite a catastrophic standoff? 384 characters. In the shadow of long-exhausted stockpiles from the Ukraine war, Edstrom warns that Russia's armed forces foresee massive replenishments in the next 2 to 5 years. Picture the cold warehouses groaning under piles of fresh munitions, the metallic clang echoing like a drumbeat of regained menace, smelled of gunpowder and grease, felt in the chill draft as doors slam shut. They expect threats to swell, yet beneath it all lies a defiant strategy. What if Sweden's defenses could parry this resurgence? Rhetorical whispers stir the air. How long before Russia realizes no safe haven remains? Cliffhanger. But wait, what force will fuel Sweden's stand against such peril? Edstrom's brief emerges partly to guide Sweden toward NATO's lofty goals. Visualize polished boardrooms where maps unfurl, outlining fortified European shield walls against Russian incursions. The hum of projectors buzzes faintly, parchment rustling under fingers tracing jagged borders, scent of coffee masking tense undercurrents. Defense is strengthened, not just for Sweden but Europe-wide. Here, Paul Johnson's voice cuts through, raw and urgent. The Ukraine war's lessons shout that Russia pushes long-range Mike relentlessly, with cruise missiles, ballistic ones, and drones sweeping skies. We must fortify, no choice. Feel the weight of urgency pressing like a storm cloud overhead. Rhetorical storm brews. Isn't this the moment truth pierces denial? Cliffhanger. Amid turmoil, Johnson unveils Sweden's probable shield, missiles stretching to a staggering 2,000 kilometers. The deterrent takes shape. Sweden secures these missiles to target deep beyond its shores. Exactly midway stands Stockholm to Moscow's heart, 1240 miles? Mere pocket change in this arsenal's reach. Plenty of leeway to aim at Russia's core if tipping points loom. Sensory tension mounts, hear distant engines roaring like beasts awakening, air thick with ozone anticipation. Yet, a crucial caveat shadows the plan. Rhetorical reckoning arises. Would such power ever bend without a sacred trigger? Cliffhanger. Enter Article 5 of NATO's treaty, the key that could unleash global fury. Edstrom specifies usage solely under Article 5's invocation. NATO deems any assault on one member an assault on all, binding assists, not merely force, but at each nation's whim. Aid flows as needed, military might pouring forth with discretion's veil. Finesse in crafting. Edstrom's stroke paints the move purely defensive, shunning aggression in law's gaze. Distinctly proactive defense, affirming its essence through mention. Sweden signals to Russia, missiles poised only if NATO attacked, held for no lesser call. Tactile gravity pulls. Imagine fingers tracing cold metal treaties, pulse quickening in profound signaling. Rhetorical chill descends. Doesn't this shield Sweden too? Cliffhanger. As NATO kin, Sweden can summon the claws if struck, leaving Russia trapped, exposed to Sweden's wrath. The noose tightens. An attack on Sweden ignites full NATO fury to eye in the chilling reality of depleted arsenals post-Ukraine conflict. Edstrom forecasts Russia's potential for colossal resupply within 2 to 5 years. Envision vast hangars shrouded in frost, crates thundering open with fresh warheads, their acrid scent of propellant lingering like a harbinger of storm. Forces brace for escalating peril, yet Sweden schemes defiance. Feel the grim resolve, isn't it time to turn the tide before shadows engulf all? Cliffhanger, twists await as Edström's document unfolds its hidden motives. Edström's paper partly aims to steer Sweden toward NATO's ambitious standards. Picture dimly lit strategy rooms, where rustling pages reveal blueprints for Europe's bulwarks against Russia's shadow. The whisper of printers hums softly, ink fresh and sharp, coffee's bittersweet aroma masking electric tension. Goals pivot to bolstering allies' shields. Here, a shift occurs. Defense Minister Paul Johnson speaks candidly. Ukraine's ordeal screams that Russia rampages in long-range tech, cruise missiles, ballistic variants, drones spanning horizons. Urgency demands we counteract, imperative. Vibrations of fear ripple through the air. Rhetorical questions swirl, aren't warnings enough to spur action? Cliffhanger, Johnson unveils the linchpin, a deterrent poised for 2,000 kilometers. Sweden's path involves acquiring these extended-range missiles for deterrence. Significantly, Stockholm to Moscow spans roughly 620 miles, half the missile's potential. Ample buffer to target Russia's heart if provoked. Sensory dread builds, imagine Engine's thunderous roars piercing silence, air heavy with impending chaos. But conditions apply. A pivotal restraint emerges. Rhetorical quandary looms, what turns caution to commitment? Cliffhanger, enter Article 5, NATO's marrow, binding nations in reciprocal defense. Edström mandates activation solely via Article 5. The treaty decrees that harm to any member equates harm to all, mandating support. Though not obligatory armed responses, nations choose wisely, aid ranging from logistical feat to raw military surge. Edström's nuanced ploy shines through. Framing missiles under 5 presents a purely reactive stance, evading aggressive labels legally. Evidently preparatory defense, reinforced by the clause's emphasis. Sweden conveys to Russia, these weapons await NATO's assault, untouchable otherwise. Physical weight of covenant presses, seals inked with tremulous hands, cold ink against warm skin. Rhetorical edge sharpens, doesn't this forge unbreakable protection? Cliffhanger, as NATO affiliate, Sweden retains invocation rights if assaulted, forging Russia's inescapable trap. An incursion here summons collective thunder. Can Sweden's arsenal truly tilt the scales? Imagine if a single missile could shatter Russia's iron grip on Eastern Europe, leaving Putin quaking in his bunker, his grand empire crumbling like sand under a brutal storm? As Sweden's defense chiefs unveil long-range missiles tied to NATO's Article 5, how far will they push Putin's paranoia to the brink? 362 characters. In the last chapter, we explored how Sweden's new missiles, massed under NATO's Article 5 banner, defensively threaten Russia, ensuring any aggression against Sweden or allies would unleash full Allied retaliation. This strategic shield humiliates Putin's dreams of unchecked dominance, forcing him to reckon with a unified front he can't bully. Sweden boldly declares to Russia, attack NATO, and feel our wrath. Now, swing doors creak open in the mist-shrouded Stockholm halls, revealing the game-changer missiles destined to shatter Moscow's calm. What horrors could these weapons unleash upon Russia's heart? The scent of gunmetal mixes with ozone in hidden arsenals, as Swedish officials ponder. Would Putin's elite tremble, their lavish palaces rumbling under incoming fire? Sweden's chief defense staff, Carl-Johan Edström, insists on acquiring cruise missiles that stretch up to 2,000 kilometers, roughly 1,240 miles. They target Russia's critical sites, far beyond mere borders, deterring any invasion with apocalyptic potential. The sharp sting of urgency bites. Reuters reports on November 25 that these systems will bolster Sweden's defenses against Russia's looming threats. Edström's warning? Russia will rearm massively in 2 to 5 years. Despite bleeding stockpiles in Ukraine. Can Sweden truly outmatch this beast? Rhetorical whispers echo, how does one humble an emperor in his own land? Defense Minister Paul Johnson shares the grim truth. Ukraine's war shows Russia's wild expansion in missiles, drones, and ballistic horrors. Sweden must rise, he says. Those new missiles? Pride's peak at 2,000 kilometers, bridging Stockholm to Moscow easily. Moscow's turn to sweat, its sirens wailing in the night dew. But here's the twist, usage bound solely to Article 5. Attacking a NATO ally means triggering collective fury. No aggression, pure protection. Yet, if Sweden's ground shakes, Putin can't hide. Striking Sweden? That's punching NATO, inviting Swedish vengeance, missiles screaming through icy skies. What airy void in Edström's plan? No specific weapon named. Only buzz for buying such marvels. Eyes turn to German-made Taurus missiles, ordered for Sweden's Gripen jets, from manufacturer MBDA. The aviationist notes integration underway, making Taurus the front-runner for Edström's demands. Not alone, but leading. Why Putin's dread? These have haunted Ukraine rumors. Germany hesitates, but Russia recoils. Speed, range, power, devastating Russian assets. Smell of cold steel and burning fuel lingers. Taurus, a 2005 precision beast, masters hardened bunkers. It shreds deep facilities, all shapes, all sizes. Marketing hyperbole? Yet, specs scream truth. Recall that ICKB Nation in Oslo Labs. Expert Fabian Hoffman praises Taurus's fuse, programming detonations in target cores, like a building's heart. Warhead named Mephisto. 481 kilograms. About 1,060 pounds, a tandem genius. Penetrates, explodes deep, the sound of cracking concrete, dust clouds billowing. Higher kill rate than Storm Shadows, crushing bridges, bunkers. Turbofan engine extends range, surpassing competitors. But shadow looms. Taurus spans just 500 kilometers. 310 miles. Barely denting Stockholm-Moscow distance. Far from 2,000 kilometers deterrence. Useless? Not quite. Fired from jets over Baltic waves, it could lash inland Russia. Moscow evasion? Tricky without airspace intrusion. Training gleams as a silver lining. 12 weeks for mastery, leaked German calls reveal. Yet, the real grind? Integrating Taurus into Gripen fleets. Sweden's forging ahead now. But alas, 500 kilometers falls short of Edström's terror threshold. If this is the choice, Putin's smug grin returns? Or does a hidden card lurk, twisting fate? What if Sweden unveils a truly monstrous upgrade, blasting Moscow before dawn? Will Putin's throne ignite, or does a secret alliance shatter this fragile calm? A shadow creeps closer, decisions thunder in the wind. When will the skies erupt? In our previous discussion, we delved into the Financial Times 2024 article, revealing the Mephisto as a smart warhead that burrows deep, exploding strategically to obliterate targets from within. Can a missile's precision shatter a tyrant's iron shield, leaving him exposed in the cold Moscow dawn? This revelation about Sweden's emerging arsenal sends chills through the Kremlin. Imagine the scent of burning ambitions as Putin's regime crumbles before such calculated fury. Focus now on the Mephisto's cunning design, piercing armored hides with a whisper of inevitability. The fuse ignites only upon reaching a chosen spot, like a predator's talon sinking into the vital artery of a concrete fortress. Buildings quake, walls splinter under the relentless pressure, rendering them ghost shells, unfit for any purpose. The air thick with acrid dust, the ground vibrating like a dying heartbeat. Why does this matter so much? Fabian Hoffman sheds light. This expert on missile tech, once at the University of Oslo, praises this edge. Taurus boasts a superior kill rate. Its fuse lets the warhead obliterate intricate setups, such as massive bridges, far better than Storm Shadow's simple scalp. Pair that genius with a turbofan engine, humming like a vengeful storm, extending its reach beyond rivals. Yet, a shadow looms. Is Taurus the perfect guardian Edström craves? Saab claims its range tops at 500 kilometers. 310 miles. Admirable? Sure. But Stockholm to Moscow stretches 800 kilometers, barely half, nowhere near the demanded 2,000 kilometers for true deterrence. Does that render it powerless? Hardly a pushover. As an air-to-surface marvel, Taurus launches from fighter jets, swooping over the Baltic's icy spray, their engines roaring defiance. Sweden could strike Russian soil from afar, tugging at Putin's fortified borders with every launch. Moscow's spires gleam under attack, but can Taurus truly threaten the capital? Not reliably, unless jets penetrate Russian skies, a gamble brimming with peril. The leather grip of pilots' controls, sweat beating on skin and the cockpit's claustrophobic hum. A silver lining emerges though. Training wraps in 12 weeks, whispered in leaked German calls. But integration proves the true hurdle. Sweden labors to weave Taurus into their aviation tapestry, forging an unbreakable link as we speak. We can't dodge the truth. Reuters spotlights this gap in Edström's vision. The missile they highlight falls short on the 2,000-kilometer benchmark. So, what unearthly weapon rises to claim that throne? The answer whispers of humiliation, a twist that could strip Putin's pride in the global spotlight, his once untouchable empire vulnerable to Swedish shadow. Yet, Edström offers no hint. Is this ghost missile forged in Swedish forges, or imported from distant allies? America's Tomahawk edges close. 1,600 kilometers in range, yet no sign Sweden seeks it. That silence fuels the fire. Will this nameless behemoth redefine power, turning the hunted into the hunter? Picture Putin pacing his gilded halls, the weight of fear pressing like a vice, his legacy teetering on a single strike. What if the tables flip entirely? Sweden not just defending, but dictating the battlefield's cruel dance? The suspense builds, a storm brewing, ready to engulf the arrogant regime in chaotic winds. Who dares predict the fallout, as alliances crack and loyalties blur in this web of cinematic strategy? Stay tuned, the next revelation could unravel everything you've assumed about this shadowy standoff. Imagine the cold steel of a missile poised to strike, its engine's low hum vibrating the air like a predator's growl. As Sweden steps into the arms of NATO, Vladimir Putin faces a nightmare he never anticipated, one where distant threats become all too real. What if Sweden's silent weapon could shatter Russia's defenses in an instant, leaving Putin trembling in his bunker? That's the chilling reality unfolding now, as the invasion of Ukraine nears its fourth agonizing year. Putin, wrestling with crises he once dismissed, now endures Ukraine's relentless drones and missiles piercing Moscow itself. But this wasn't isolated horror. Sweden's entry into the fray amplifies the terror, unveiling a new weapon that dwarfs NATO's past fears. Sweden demands long-range cruise missiles capable of spanning up to 2,000 kilometers, targeting Russia's heartlands. These aren't mere symbols, they're deterrents against aggression, aimed squarely at Russian threats. As Sweden's Chief of Defense Staff, Carl-Johan Edström, declares, this bolsters NATO's goals, countering Putin's escalating long-range arsenal of cruise missiles, ballistic weapons, and drones that threaten European stability. Who could calm the storm in Putin's mind, the bitter scent of fear clinging like smoke from a battlefield? In late November, Sweden's armed forces urged acquisitions of these devastating projectiles, with Defense Minister Pål Jonson echoing the call. Ukraine's war proves Russia's rampage. Now, NATO must forge an iron shield. Yet, Sweden tethers these arms to NATO's Article 5. A cunning clause that labels any assault on Sverige an attack on the alliance. Not just talk, this invites collective reprisal, forcing Putin to reckon with Sweden's strike potential, even against his own capital. Cleverly framed, this defensive veil masks raw power, ensuring provocations end in ruin. Picture the whisper of wings deploying from a fighter, the missiles heat trailing like dragon's breath through icy skies. But what engine of destruction haunts Putin most? Reports spotlight Germany's Taurus missile, already ordered by Sweden for integration into Gripens. With a range of 500 kilometers, it slices through hardened bunkers via its 1,060-pound Mephisto warhead, programmed to detonate deep inside targets. It flies low, evading radar with inertial guidance and terrain mapping, making air defenses weep. Fabian Hoffmann praises its precision, surpassing rivals like Storm Shadow, obliterating bridges and bases alike. Training takes mere 12 weeks, and though not matching the 2,000-kilometer dream, it strikes terror from the Baltic. Russia loathes its rumored aid to Ukraine, fearing its speed and lethality. Yet, Sweden seeks more, leaving questions unanswered. Does such a Swedish-born marvel exist? America's Tomahawk cruises near with 1,600 kilometers, but no deals loom, and Gripens can't launch them yet. If Taurus leads, why the dread? Feel the adrenaline surge and opponent's humiliation brewing in Putin's isolated rage, as past boasts crumble to dust. For Putin, it's not the missile's specs that shatter his confidence, it's Sweden's proximity, a NATO stalwart casting shadows on Russia's flank. Years before neutrality's fall, he dreaded this, unleashing threats in 2022 as Finland and Sweden eyed membership. Through spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, Russia warned, NATO breeds confrontation, expansion destabilizes Europe, forcing Moscow to rebalance should they join. Those words hung heavy, like thunder before lightning. Now, with Sweden's hardline stance, the tables turn. Russia's imbalance, ignited by Ukraine's invasion, spirals out. Putin backpedaled by June's end, but the echo of his nightmares persists. What reckoning awaits next? In the shadow of an escalating crisis, where Vladimir Putin's unyielding grip on power faces new tremors from afar, imagine the chill wind whipping through Moscow's stark towers, carrying whispers of distant threats that once seemed insurmountable. Ukraine's relentless drones and missiles now pierce Russia's heartland, forcing the Kremlin to confront a nightmare it never anticipated. But that was merely the prelude. Enter Sweden, a neutral force now gearing up with weaponry that sends shivers down Putin's spine far deeper than any NATO pledge. Picture the resolute silhouette of Stockholm against a brooding Baltic horizon, as Sweden unveils plans for cruise missiles capable of striking deep into enemy territories. According to reports from Reuters on November 25, Sweden demands acquisition of long-range missiles to deter aggression, extending strikes up to 2,000 kilometers, roughly 1,240 miles, targeting critical sites and military hubs. This range, a pointed message to Russia, emerges amid warnings of Moscow's rising military rearmament in the next 2 to 5 years, despite exhausting stockpiles in Ukraine's blood-soaked fields. Swedish defense assessments, echoed by outlets like SVT, highlight Russia's escalating capabilities in ballistic missiles, cruise weapons, and extended-range drones. Defense Minister Paul Johnson's words cut through the fog. Ukraine's brutal war reveals Russia's aggressive buildup, demanding Sweden's strengthened deterrence. These missiles, aligned with NATO's defensive goals for European members under Article 5, promise swift response only if Russia triggers a collective attack. That clause, the pact stating any assault on one ally is an assault on all, cleverly frames Sweden's arsenal as purely protective, not provocative. Yet, touch the icy metal of these weapons' imagined surfaces, feel the hum of their engines vibrating through the air, and sense their potential to humiliate Putin by exposing his bluff on NATO's toothlessness. Why does this Swedish gambit haunt Russia's tyrant more than Ukraine's own strikes? Uncover the shocking reality: Russia's own warmongering birthed Europe's turmoil, yet Kremlin spin doctors twisted into victimhood. Echoing the cloak and dagger dance of threats, where Sweden's Article 5 shield turns the tables on Putin's saber-rattling, diplomatic backpedaling reveals a leader's facade cracking under pressure. Russians often overlook how their invasion of Ukraine shattered continental balance. But truth seldom silences propagandists like Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin's voice, who concocts fantasies of reality. Fast forward to late June, as Sweden's NATO entry nears inevitability, Putin softens his tone at a Turkmenistan conference. He declares neutrality towards Sweden and Finland, citing no disputes or issues, unlike the volatile case of Ukraine. Gone are the April barbs from Peskov warning that NATO's growth threatens Europe, necessitating Russia's forced balancing acts. Yet Putin swiftly unveils his true unease, issuing a veiled warning cloaked in permissiveness. Sweden and Finland may join as they please, he concedes, but any deployment of troops or bases there invites Russia's mirrored menace, symmetrical and unyielding. This doublespeak, a masterful Kremlin art, betrays Putin's deep-seated worry. Sweden's membership transforms a solo combatant into a fortress bolstered by Article 5's ironclad alliance. The acrid scent of geopolitical smoke lingers, as jet engines roar faintly on the horizon, symbolizing 31 nations poised to defend Stockholm against any Russian overreach. What double-edged sword has Putin unsheathed in his frantic efforts to intimidate Sweden, only to find it slicing back at him? Beneath the thunder of Putin's hollow reassurances hides a terror dating back to 2022 Sweden dilemmas, when ambitions for NATO entrance painted targets on formerly vulnerable lands. If attacked alone, Sweden once stood as a solitary flame amid encroaching darkness, manageable in its fragility. Now, woven into NATO's thread under Article 5, it commands universal defense, binding allies in retribution. This paradigm shift humiliates Putin's strategic mind, unraveling his isolated dominion. The tactile anticipation of steel-cold missiles, their whispers of precision carving through fortified walls, exposes Russia's overextensions, a reckless gamble against a united front. Smell the metallic tang of suppressed fear in Moscow's halls, where diplomats fidget under the weight of inevitable response. How will Putin's crumbling bravado play out as Sweden's arsenal looms like a ghost ship on forbidden seas? Revel in the twist. Russia's own aggressive posturing now fuels the very terror Putin despises in others. As we explored earlier, Putin must grapple with Sweden's entry into NATO under Article 5, transforming it from a solo threat into a powerhouse backed by alliance defenses. Now, imagine the icy grip of fear tightening around the Kremlin. Sweden's moves signal a chilling shift in power dynamics. Can you envision the thunderous roar of engines piercing the frozen Baltic air? Sweden's missiles aren't just weapons, they're a symphony of menace, whistling through the sky toward Moscow, their shadows dancing on snow-dusted runways. This isn't random posturing. Edström's caveats about Article 5 missiles reveal a razor-sharp strategy, firing only if NATO's collective fury awakens. What if this trigger masks a veiled ultimatum to Putin? Picture the Kremlin's walls vibrating under the weight of NATO's 31 nations rallying, with Swedish warhead clouds elbowing in Stockholm's volleys merely the overture to a full orchestral assault. Why does this haunt Putin so deeply? Sweden looms too close for comfort, its rugged coastline a silent sentinel gaping at Russia across the Baltic Sea. Not a land border, yet the waterway pulses like a vein, connecting Stockholm's missile orchards to Finland, Estonia, and Latvia, NATO's frontline guard dogs. Their blitzes from Sweden could seed terror deeper into Russia's Wild West, with Putin's forces scrambling through frostbitten forests, boots crunching on gravel-strewn paths. NATO allies might borrow these long-range marvels, deploying them eastward, stretching targets from border bleakness into Moscow's heart. Even the Taurus missile, with its 500-kilometer punchline, could pry open northwest Russia if lofted from Finland's icy outposts. But Moscow? Helsinki sits a mocking 890 kilometers away, beyond Taurus's tired trajectory. Still, it shrinks the gap to festering military nests near the frontier, a prelude to grander designs. Imagine the smirk from Stockholm, Putin's frenzied outbursts echoing in vain, his grip slipping on oil-slicked control levers. Yet, a 2,000-kilometer beast would flip the script, hurling Moscow into easy view like a bullseye in a blizzard. Putin's dire warnings, once bold guffaws, now whisper of desperation. Can he truly evade Sweden's shadow alliance, or will the Baltic's whispers of war engulf him? You grip your seat. What seismic shift awaits next? Dots of distant drones hum faintly, promising turmoil yet unseen. In the last segment, Charlotte von Essen highlighted Sweden's growing danger from Russian threats, urging alertness against destabilizing narratives. Now, as tensions soar, Russia's leader dismisses Sweden's defensive rights, but Stockholm sees through the ruse. Sweden spots the infiltration and cultivates a readiness spirit, far from full wartime frenzy, yet infused with resolve for potential clashes. Putin dreads this awakening spreading, favoring a complacent Scandinavian foe. Should Moscow-bound missiles arrive in Sweden, it signals heightened vigilance and power that terrifies him. Picture this, the hum of jet engines vibrating through icy Finnish air, the acrid scent of fuel mixing with pine resin as Gripen pilots train under stark northern lights. Is Putin's fortress crumbling under Sweden's bold gaze, missiles poised to strike fear into his core? Swedes forge an unbreakable stance, sensing Russia's shadows loom larger each day, their hearts pounding with patriotic fire. Does Sweden truly acknowledge Russia's maneuvers, or is this a facade? The nation, though not fully mobilized, nurtures a collective grit, steeling against surprise assaults. Why does Putin wish ignorance to prevail? He'd rather catch them off guard, like a predator stalking unaware prey. Imagine the tremble in his hands, the sweat beading on his brow as he realizes Stockholm's clarity. Cliffhanger: if those missiles bridge the gap, Moscow's tyrant knows Sweden stands formidable, a NATO shield shining brightly. Yet, whispers of even greater perils echo, Ukraine's ingenuity brewing a storm. Transitioning from Sweden's defiant shift, what if Moscow isn't just wary of Europe's edge? Sweden morphs into a potent NATO force, chilling Putin's expansion dreams, while Ukraine forges ahead relentlessly. Feel the chill wind carrying explosives' sharp tang, hear the distant roar of aerial threats piercing the fog-shrouded frontier. Sweden's strategic pivot, as outlined by Edstrom, isn't just words, it's a blueprint for survival. Has Putin unleashed a monster he can't control? The plan outlines actions for Stockholm, but the mere proposal rattles his throne, transforming Sweden into an urgent menace to Kremlin's schemes. The air thickens with unspoken dread, where every report becomes a gauntlet throw. Can Sweden repel Russian shadows alone? Its evolving mindset echoes resilience, a sensory avalanche of vigilance, sirens wailing and drills, the firm grip of citizen hands on emergency kits. Why fret about Stockholm's arsenal when Ukraine's drone feats redefine warfare? Here comes the revelation. In a groundbreaking feat, Kyiv downs a Russian chopper deep in enemy skies with a long-range drone, turning tables with unyielding cunning. Feel the pulse of rotor blades faltering, the earthy scent of scorched earth rising, as the impossible becomes reality. Putin's facade shatters, Ukraine's innovation, swift and silent, humiliates him where he least expects. But here's the epic twist, this isn't mere retaliation, it's a fuse igniting global upheaval. As Ukraine's drones pierce Russian defenses, Sweden's missiles loom, painting Putin's empire as vulnerable prey. The dust settles. Revelations unfolding, Europe's unity forging a new era, Moscow's grip slipping into chaos. Will Putin respond, or crumble under this compounded terror? The future hangs, charged with destiny's roar. Can you imagine a weapon so powerful it chills the blood of a dictator in his fortified bunker? That's the horror unfolding for Vladimir Putin as Sweden unveils missiles that could shatter Moscow's defenses, humiliating his empire and flipping the script on European stability. Picture the distant hum of jet engines slicing through the crisp Baltic air, a chilly wind carrying the scent of sea salt and impending dread. This isn't just about armaments, it's a psychological warfare that haunts Putin's dreams, forcing him to confront Sweden's bold stand against Russian aggression. In the last segment, we explored how Sweden's new long-range cruise missiles, potentially including the Taurus model with its devastating tandem warhead, promise to strike deep into Russian territory up to 2,000 kilometers while being constrained to defensive use under NATO's Article 5. Now, as the winter frost bites deeper, a stark reality emerges. Putin's warnings to Sweden about NATO ties boil down to fears of shared weaponry. Russia's leader understands that stockpiling these missiles for Sweden means other NATO allies, even nearer to Russia, could access them too. At minimum, Swedish Gripen jets might soar into those lands, missiles primed, if Article 5 activates. These tactical nightmares terrify Putin. But why does this really shock him to his core? Brace yourself for this twist. Sweden's proactive shift in mindset could be deadlier than any bomb, breeding a nation ready to resist Russian interference. Feel the electric tension in Stockholm's streets, where the sharp crack of distant artillery echoes in memories. Awakening old fears from history. Since Putin's Ukraine invasion kicked off in 2022, Sweden hasn't just whispered threats, it's molded a defiant spirit. Reports from the Chicago Council on Global Affairs in early 2024 highlighted Sweden urging civilians to brace for war, naming Russia as the clear foe. Mike Biden, former Swedish military chief, warned bluntly in January 2024, Russia's Ukraine war is merely a step, not the final act. Critics called it too harsh, too dividing, yet it drilled home one truth: Swedes must steel themselves. Fast forward to March 2025, and the Swedish security service, SAPO, escalated the alert. The BBC covered their claims of rising Russian-backed hybrid warfare and extremism. SAPO director Charlotte von Essen urged caution against destabilizing narratives and conspiracies. As Putin schemes to unsettle a nation he once scoffed could be bullied, this preparedness humiliates him, exposing his bluffs and sparking a continent-wide defiance. But wait, what hidden game is Russia playing to fracture this resolve? The air thickens with the acrid smell of propaganda smoke, a tactile web of deceit pulling tighter over divided societies.